I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delighted to introduce you to a very talented author. His name is Richard Berthold, and he has written an insightful book. It is called Dare to Struggle: The History and Society of Greece. This book offers a comprehensive and engaging exploration of Greek history, connecting ancient achievements in constitutionalism, rationalism, humanism, and individualism to contemporary Western society. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The link is below this interview. Richard, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Nice to be here.
You know, your book emphasizes the foundational role of Greek society and Western civilization. Can you explain a little bit more about why understanding Greek history is crucial for modern readers?
Yes. The Greeks were discovering things that simply didn't exist before, and you rattled off them. The Constitutionalism, Humanism, Rationalism, and in a sense, the idea of the individual. These things simply didn't exist in the pre-Greek world. The Near Eastern civilization, Egypt, Babylonia, etc., amassed a lot of data, how to build stuff, how the heavens move around, but that wasn't science. And it had to wait till the Greeks in the Archaic Age, the 7th, 6th century BC, which really is the most important time of Greek history, not the classical 5th century. It's because in those moments, unfortunately, the evidence is very, well, it's spotty for all of ancient history, but in that period, in the part of Greece known as Ionia, all the cities on the coast of modern Turkey began to come up with ideas that formed the basis of ultimately of rationalism, science and philosophy. Initially, the two were one, and then they divided. And unfortunately, because of the nature of Greek society, empirical science only went so far. There was a social attitude that doing anything with your hands rather than just sitting back and thinking about the nature of the world, doing testing, etc., was the work of a craftsman, not an intellect or a thinker. And some people went around that. Aristotle actually did deploy inductive reasoning and looking at samples and generalizing from them. But for the most part, that wouldn't really take off until the modern world.
And a lot of the great Western thinkers were actually standing on the shoulders of the great Greek thinkers. People like John Locke, our founding fathers of the United States. If it were not for the deep thinking and the philosophy of the Greeks, we might not have a Western civilization today as we know it now, correct?
No, we wouldn't. And your point about the founding fathers is hits home. Being an educated person in the late 18th century meant you knew about antiquity and the classics. And they, in fact, struggled between the Athenian model of the full-blown democracy of the 5th century and the Roman model of the Roman Republic before it became an autocracy. And they went for the Roman Republican model,
Right.
which was technically democratic, but in fact, an oligarchy of wealth, which actually shouldn't be too unfamiliar to any American these days. And they decided the Athenian democracy was simply too unstable. And in fact, it failed. Whereas the Roman quasi democracy um, worked pretty well for about 400 years. Um, I'm back.
Yeah.
I went for that. And well, you can see it. I mean, there are Roman fasces on either side of the podium in the House of Representatives. Um, it's also become a little obsolete. And there's very little democratic about the Senate
Mhm.
when one half of it now, since it's almost perfectly divided, represents 40 million more people than the other half. But
Absolutely.
that's not a question of dealing with the Greeks.
Exactly. Let's talk about your book for a second. What aspect of Greek history do you find most relevant or fascinating for today's readers? And why do you think it would be so engaging for them to learn about this aspect of Greek history?
Uh, well, the developmental stage coming out of the Greek Dark Age, which lasted until about the middle of the 8th century, the the roots of constitutionalism were already there, although uh, the Greek polis, the city-states at that time, were uh, all aristocracies of birth. But they subscribed to the basic constitutional notion, and that is the authority exercised by the state comes from below, from the group. Uh, and along with that comes the idea of citizen. That's a long story, which I go into on how that emerged and why it didn't emerge anywhere else. But in all the pre-classical uh, societies, authority came from above,
Yeah.
from uh, heaven.
Mm.
And that might go all the way to the point of the ruler actually being a manifest deity, as in Egypt. But that basic constitutional idea took a long time to achieve practicality. And the one thing missing until the 5th century in places like Athens was the uh, ability of the group to influence the government uh,
Mm.
and actually have control over the passage of laws, etc. Uh,
Absolutely.
and in the case of the Roman Republic, it took about 400 years. So then the Roman character was much different from the Greek character.
Mm.
They they were group thinkers, and the Greeks tended to be more individual about that because of the whole idea of outgoing struggle in the society, which is where I got I got the title from Mao. Nobody knows who the hell he is anymore. Uh, a lot of the references are dated because, uh, and I think that's the most important thing is when um, the pre-sophists, that is the Ionian thinkers in the 7th and 6th century, are starting to make unimaginable statements, or what had been unimaginable statements. For example, that the humans weren't created by the gods, out of this, that, or a rib or whatever. But in fact, developed from fish-like creatures that got onto the land and became human beings. So that's not exactly what happened, but that's an amazing statement in the 6th century BC when humans were always created by the gods
Right.
to be their tools for in one way or another.
They were laying the groundwork for evolution. The name of the book is Dare to Struggle, The History and Society of Greece. It is written by Richard Berthold. It is an amazing book that'll give you perspective on not only an ancient society, but on modern society as well. And that perhaps is the point. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
I was just going to say, and my favorite period is the second half of the 5th century Athens and the long war she fought with Sparta, which resulted in her defeat, the loss of the empire, a war that she was uh, far more better prepared for than the Spartans and should have won. And in the course of that war, uh, the first recognizable generation gap in society appeared as uh, the younger generation started losing the values of the older generation. And bingo, a generation gap. And you read about the war, as I tell it, and it's hauntingly familiar. It
Yeah.
sounds very much like the American experience in Vietnam,
Yeah.
which did uh, uh, produced a similar kind of response. Okay, I'm
Absolutely. Well, no, it's a great point. The parallels are there. You don't even have to read between the lines. You just have to read the lines to get it.
yeah, and I want to emphasize that this is written in a casual style. It's
Right.
very accessible, uh, and the Greeks did silly things, as all human beings
Yeah.
do, and so there is a fair amount of humor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. This is not a textbook. This is a book that you will enjoy reading, but learn a lot, probably more learning from this well written conversational book than you would from a textbook. That's for sure. Richard, we've got to run, but I want to thank you for being our guest today.
And thank you kindly. So,
Oh, my pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on
uh,
Spotlight.